Welcome. If you're a woman who has a sense that there's more out there for you, you're in the right place. I'm Whitney Baker, host of the Electric Ideas podcast. Somewhere along the line of work and kids, life carried on, but I lost track of my truth. I'm on a reflective journey, and that's what this podcast is all about. Each week, I interview a woman who is lighting her own path and offering others hope. Before our conversation ends, we'll share a reflective question for you to explore. Sometimes all we need is a jolt, a fresh idea, an aha moment that connects us to a sense of possibility. This, my friends, is what I call an electric idea. Welcome back to Electric Ideas. I'm your host, Whitney Baker. Today, we have a deeply insightful conversation ahead, and I'm excited to introduce our guest, Alison Rothman. Alison is an expert in body-centric holistic coaching and is here to share her insights and best practices from more than 25 years of experience in the area of somatic healing. In our conversation, we dive into the fascinating work of embodiment, which is something I'm deeply curious about and have been reading and learning more and more about and hearing more about in recent years. I feel like this is a super timely conversation because in a world where many women I encounter are kind of white knuckling it, really, to get through their days, I think it's really common for people to be operating on autopilot and disconnected from their bodies and the innate wisdom our bodies can offer us. So I love Alison's shares in this episode about how she personally lives with embodiment as a way of life and how she especially leans on her practices during challenging times. So whether you're someone who is just trying to feel better, live better, and you're curious about how stress impacts all of your systems, or maybe you're looking to cultivate a little bit more of an attuned life, mind, body, and spirit, and have a greater sense of personal freedom in your day-to-day, no matter where you're coming from, I feel like this is going to be an episode full of gorgeous insights and practices you can try out right away. So let's get into it. Hi, Alison. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Whitney.
I want to start with a quote from the author of The Body Keeps Score that stuck out to me. He says, "Trauma is stored in the body, in the muscles, skin, fascia, and cells. Your body is a living record of everything you've experienced, what it's done, what it's felt, and where it's been." You've been in the somatic healing space for decades. Can you explain to us how you think stress and trauma become stored in our cells and remembered by the body?
Right out the gate. Big question. Yeah, it's almost difficult to put into words, but, as we age and as we move through life, unless we have the consciousness to keep the energy moving, we naturally start taking on things, like, oh, somebody's got chronic neck tension. Okay, they've been literally holding on to, for dear life for the last many years because of some trigger response to a trauma. And so we keep going. If we keep going without, doing the work to unwind our systems, we end up with, disease. We end up with chronic patterns of tension. We end up with weird symptoms like headaches or insomnia. I mean, that's a huge one, but that's not like a weird symptom. That's very common. But, different pains in the body that start to manifest in different ways because we're not allowing ourselves to feel the full range of our human experience. And most of us don't know how to. Most of us were not taught those skills. I mean, I certainly wasn't. I had to learn. And still, to this day, 30 years later, I have moments of like, why am I so exhausted? Oh, I am completely pent up. I need to have a good cry. There's something that is needs to cycle through me that I'm just moving through too quickly in my life to not feel that.
Yeah, there's a lot there that I want to go a little bit deeper in because most of my community is women. And I'm just curious with you, when you work with women, what are some of the ailments specific to women that you see most often that might reflect that they could benefit from this kind of somatic exercises?
Insomnia, headaches, hormonal issues, which I am 50. I'm going to be 50 by the time this comes out. And menopause is a whole other thing. And I think it would be good to talk about the perimenopausal symptoms so that women actually understand, because this conversation does not happen. We are taught that we go into menopause and we just stop bleeding, but there's a whole host of things that are happening. So anger, suppressed anger coming out, the impatience with children, like physical exhaustion, depression, anxiety. I mean, all of that, they're all masking stuff that's underneath the surface, that is a disconnect from our bodies to one degree or another.
You brought up, that brings up a lot. I
Yes.
want to talk about perimenopause because I think it's really uncomfortable for a lot of women. I don't think it's a place where women feel empowered. I think that there's a huge knowledge gap just because of the discomfort for a lot of women in this topic. This might be naive, but I kind of view perimenopause and somatic healing as interconnected because of the different changes that occur to us, both emotionally, but also like in our body. Can you just tell us like how it was for you to go through perimenopause and techniques that you maybe wish all women had, body-based techniques to kind of support us during this sometimes up to 10 years, if I'm right, transition?
Yes. And it can be longer. I say I am menopausal at 50, but they say, some women start to experience perimenopause as early as 35, and it can go on through your 50s into your 60s. So it's really important to pay attention. And, the first thing that popped up for me when you asked that was, don't try to push through when you need rest, when you feel like you have hit your max and emotions are just bubbling. Find some time, even if it's stepping into the bathroom, to really honor whatever is coming up for you. There are obviously, like, as we change emotionally, hormonally, our bodies physically change too. And it's not just the conversation that most women are talking about, the weight gain and I don't even know what else they're talking about, but that's the main thing, like the weight gain, But if we can shift our perspective around, that's actually not the main symptom here. The main symptom is just that our bodies are changing and we have to learn how to evolve with them, how to meet them, and not push through whatever is surfacing for us. So there's definitely, I'm a huge proponent of meditation. And I don't know if you have gone into that in depth on one of your episodes, or probably many of your episodes, but meditation to me is the guiding light. It is the opportunity to get ourselves anchored as we progress through all these different phases of life. But a lot of this is new terrain. Our relationships change. The way that we meet our lives change. Our priorities change. Our energy levels change. Last week, the week before I bleed, now I know I'm like wiped. I was like, I'm in my office. I had a break. I was like, okay, I'm going to get all this stuff done. I'm like, nope, actually, I'm going to close my eyes for 20 minutes. I did that like 3 times in one day because I needed it. And it helped my body to rest. And I feel like the weight gain happens when we're pushing through. We're trying to just keep doing what we've always done, but you can't, because we have to evolve as the hormones evolve in us. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. And I feel like it's just almost the term attunement is coming to mind for me, because it's a little bit of a self-betrayal when we expect our bodies to do things that they've always done when they're changing. And when I feel like this pushing through is so common and expected. I talk a lot about women wearing like busy as a badge of honor. And I'm just done with that. I feel like we're killing ourselves for no reason, and we're really disconnected from our bodies with that kind of sentiment.
Yeah.
I want to circle back because, a lot of this conversation comes down to kind of what I feel like is the body recording what the mind maybe traverses or doesn't process. And I think that it's changed, but in past generations of women, I don't think there was enough talk about anxiety and shame and some of these trickier emotions that come up. And I think we're taught to push them down, not talk about them, escape, numb. And I'm just curious, when women feel these emotions, and let's assume this is a mom who's working, has kids, like maybe she's not going to have time to go suddenly drop everything and meditate for 40 minutes. If you can, please do. Do you have any small body-based tools that you use that maybe women can do to at least acknowledge and not just completely push through when they're navigating some of these trickier emotions?
Absolutely. And my business is called Embody Life because I am all about how can we bring these practices into our everyday life. I was a single mom for 11 years, busy entrepreneur work. So it is all about bringing the practices into the perhaps little crevices. So like I said, I'm an early morning meditator. So I'm like, if I can do it, anybody can do it. So start your day, even if it's 5 minutes of having that anchor with yourself. If you can't even get yourself to a cushion, lay in bed for 5 minutes. Big fan of hand on heart, hand on belly, like coming home, cold showers, end your shower with colds. That helps with anxiety. That helps with circulation. That helps with depression. I'm always talking about bookending our days. Okay. So this is like our morning. Get yourself as anchored as you can before you jump into kids, to work, etc. Then throughout the day, okay, like things are bubbling up. You're in go mode. I love putting my hands right under my clavicle. So there's like a point right here. And you can close your eyes and just like a little gentle massage. So come in just a little bit. So I'm like, I want to touch you, but
We can
yep.
describe for listeners. Maybe we'll do a little video.
Yeah. So, right in here, it's very calming. Another thing I love, and I teach this all the time, is take your hands across your body and you find that spot right where your bicep muscle kind of meets. And it doesn't have to be like a hard pressure or contact, but to just give yourself a little massage and focus on your breath. And this is incredibly grounding, incredibly soothing. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling anxious, and you can even do it, I'm always like, everybody pees. So, if you need to go into the bathroom and sit on the toilet and like take the deep breaths, imagining your breath coming all the way down into your pelvic floor. I'm a big fan of Kegels in the middle as you're moving through your day to get yourself anchored into your breath. It's like these little moments of, okay, feeling my feet on the ground. I'm sitting at a desk, take my shoes off, feel the feet, imagining roots are growing out from the soles of your feet. It's these little things that we can start to insert through our day so that we don't get to the end of the day and you're like, whoa, what in the hell just happened? Where was I? What's going on? Where am I? What am I even feeling? So it just slows things down and keeps you embodied as you move through the busyness or just the denseness of your days. Yeah.
You are so speaking my language. I love all of those examples because they're practical. And I think what happens a lot for women is that the momentum of the day just takes off. And I talk a lot about how we get to the end of the day, and if we're lucky enough to have family to gather with, it's like, I feel like we look forward to that. And if we've just been running ourselves in the ground the entire day and not listening, it's really frustrating to show up to that time pooped.
You're running on empty. And this relates to this menopause conversation that I want to like hone in on this piece of this. And then I do want to come back to the bookend at the end of the day because it's equally as important. And I think, especially, I don't want to generalize, but women in their 30s, and I would even say 40s, we're just like, yeah, like we're doing we got younger kids and a lot of people are working or parenting or, it's a busy time and it's an exciting time, but it can be incredibly exhausting. And so there is a lot of that pushing through. And let me say that the pushing through greatly affects the menopausal years. So we actually have this opportunity during this time to really reset our systems so that we are so in tune with our bodies, that we don't get to that point and we're like, oh my God, like everything's like broken down. And I work with a lot of women who are in their 50s. They're like, I wish I'd taken better care of myself when I was younger, because you get to that point and you're like shriveled up and your emotions are just all over the place. So if we can kind of rein it in the earlier years, I feel like it sets us up for a smoother transition into menopause. So hopefully that lands. Yeah.
Yes, that lands completely. I think there's a little bit of a victim mode. Sometimes I feel like women are just complaining. And I would rather think about it like, how can I traverse this time period that can be challenging? I'm not acknowledging the challenges, but how can I really support myself through this transition?
And empower yourself. How can we empower ourselves? This is part of being a woman. And yes, it's a blessing and a curse, of course. Like we have a lot that we're working with, as if it is not enough to like give birth to children, and be the one who's pregnant and all the things. And then we have all these different phases. But rather than collapsing of like, oh my God, like, oh, I feel like shit, and believe me, I'm not making light of this at all. I have certainly had moments as my body is shifting of like, oh my, it's like a grief of like, I wish I could still do what I used to do. I wish I had the energy that I used to have, or my knee is constantly hurting now, whereas it didn't used to, and then I have to snap myself out of it and be like, okay, what can I do? How can I work with the limitations, quote unquote, that I am experiencing at this time? How can I meet myself and really take good care of myself so that this next chapter of life can actually be, feel empowering, can feel exciting, can feel like I'm actually wiser now. I'm transitioning into, there's more gray hairs popping up and more wrinkles on my face. And let's embrace it and celebrate it rather than the kind of like, fuck, this sucks. Still having the fuck, this sucks moments, but you know what I'm saying.
I know exactly what you're saying. I know that we're covering a lot of deep territory, but you brought up grief, and I want to go there because I think we're at a certain age where sadly it's a emotion a lot more women are going through. And I think some women were brought up either in households or generations where it was almost the let's not cry, hold it all in, be strong, these messages, or hold it together for your kids, which is another whole cycle. And I'm just curious, whether it be grief for losing a loved one or grief for a younger version of ourselves or a relationship that we lost, do you have any recommendations for how women can reframe their relationship with grief and processing grief and accepting grief over time?
Well, I'm a big fan of we have to feel it to heal it. We have to go into the sadness and the grief in order for it to transform. And the more that we suppress, the deeper it embeds in our cells, in our tissues, and it will cause a whole host of issues, right? So again, it's like any embodiment practice that we can do to help provide the platform and space for the feelings to surface. So meditation, I'm a huge fan of writing, and not necessarily like in a nice, neat journal that you feel like you got to write really well in, but I get the cheap spiral notebooks and I do morning pages, and it's 3 pages, and sometimes nothing comes through and sometimes something very cathartic comes through, and it just keeps the pipes moving, right? It keeps the channels clear. So movement, it's all these practices that can help us to access what is actually going on for us rather than just being in go mode or numbing, distracting, drinking the wine every night. Like that's not going to help. It's just not going to help. So, or staying busy or shopping or social media scrolling, or all of these keep us from actually feeling what is coming up for us. And that is the greatest gift we can give ourselves, is to allow us to feel the harder things. I just did a video about this because it is bubbling up all around, lots of just breakdowns of relationships, parents, sick, the world. There's just a lot of grief popping up. So feeling it to heal it.
That's spot on. And I agree with you. I talk a lot about a morning routine or rhythm, and I want to go back there because I do think it's a really important time to just set the tone for your day. And it's not about like toxic positivity and like everything's going to go. For me, it's more about pouring into myself so that my baseline, I have capacity to navigate anything that comes up with a little bit more space and grace, because we all know at this age, there's probably going to be something that comes up. I just wanted to say, I think finding something to do in the morning that feels good for you is the best starting point, I believe. I think a lot of women, I feel like, get analysis paralysis. Like, I'm supposed to have this morning routine now. And it's like work out 30 minutes and then I'm doing my green juice. It's just like, I always say 5 minutes just of quiet. I meditate every morning, but find something that feels anchoring and nourishing for you. Start with 5 minutes. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Anything that you can do. And that's where it's like, I totally agree with you. They have to have the perfect space to go down to before they can meditate, or I have to have enough sleep, but I need to sleep more. No, you need to start exactly where you are. And if that means, and that's why I said, if that means you wake up 5 minutes earlier and you're just laying in bed and breathing before you look at your phone, before you're engaging with your kids or your partner, yes. But I am a huge believer in the morning routine. And, when my son was he's almost 16 now, but when he was about 2.5 and I was single mom in it, I was exhausted. He wasn't sleeping. I was drowning. I was just like trying to go through the motions, with him. I would sleep until the bitter end. And then I could not access myself because I jumped right in with him. And so in that moment, I decided I was going to get up, and I decided to get up a solid hour before him. So I was up ridiculously early, but just declaring that and choosing every day, no matter how tired I was, to get up and get myself anchored before I started my days was the biggest game changer of anything that I have ever done. So I am a huge believer, and I agree, and it's like learning how to respond to our lives rather than react is determinant on how we are feeling and how anchored we are in our bodies and in ourselves.
I too believe in bookending my days. I live in the real world. Does it happen every single day of the year? Not always. It's not about being perfect, but it's about, for me, intentionally having it part of my rhythm.
Yes.
And giving myself grace when it doesn't happen. I sometimes, what this looks like for me is even just, I work from home. I have the luxury of being mom at around 3:30. And one of the small things I try to do is to really shut out of my day, my work day intentionally, and just do something that's not a doing thing, something that's a being thing for at least 5 minutes before my children walk in the door, just to kind of disconnect from any energy or momentum of my day. And so I'm just curious what you practice or what you kind of recommend. Maybe I know I have some women in my community who are, in that period of their life where they're like coming home, they've been in traffic, they need to run inside, the kids are waiting to be fed, or they're picking them up for daycare. It's just like, I'm just getting curious about even these small moments where we can tap into ourselves and try to give ourselves a little pause throughout the day.
Yes, absolutely. And for me, what I really am vigilant about is before bed. I have now a teenager who stays up later than me, so I don't have to deal with bedtime anymore. I remember those days very clearly, of while my son was like in the bath, I would go into my room and put my legs up the wall. And that was my moment of surrender and softness and stillness before I had to deal with trying to get him to sleep. Now, he really wants nothing to do with me at night, which is sad in and of itself. But I am a big believer in the binaural beats, which I don't know if you know them. They're wonderful. I wish I had found them when my son was a baby, because I think it would have been a game changer. But my family knows about 7:30, 8 o'clock, the beats are on, and I start dimming lights in the house. They don't love it, but I don't care, because that's what we're doing. I like candles, especially like as we transition into the new season. And then before bed, you have put your kids to bed and you are just like, that is it. I recommend getting onto the floor and just at least having a moment to anchor your body in the earth, let yourself feel held. If you have it in you, to just do some gentle stretching so that you're connected. I love bolsters. I lay over bolsters. Sometimes it's literally, I've got the beats on, I got the candles going, and I just lay in my bed for like 10 minutes and just breathe. Close my eyes and just breathe before I transition into sleep. And that's my bookend. That's how I really, if I can get a bath in, wonderful, but again, yes, it's real life. We do what we can.
That's beautiful. I really appreciate you sharing it. I coincidentally, I just had an episode today come out about sleep. So we don't need to go deep into that, but I sometimes find it interesting. Women are just pushing all day and then they fall into bed exhausted, but completely revved up. And then they get frustrated why they're not going to sleep. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think that even if we're exhausted, you said we can all lay on the floor and kind of have an intentional moment. There's so many things I love about that. First, it's just this like very tender tending to oneself. Mm-hmm. I think we all need that, and we all have it within ourselves to gift ourselves that. But I do think from a practical perspective, having that window where we intentionally release the tension and stress of the day before we expect our bodies to have a peaceful sleep is brilliant.
It is essential. And, it's this whole sleep etiquette, and I always think about it. When you have a baby and the baby is like fussy, whatever, what do you do before you're trying to get the baby to sleep? Quite often we bathe them, we give them a massage, we turn down the lights, we put on nice music. We need to do that for ourselves too. I just had this conversation with my partner actually, because he is a TV watcher. I am not. And then he complains he doesn't sleep. I'm like, dude, you need to like power it down, even if it's just reading a book instead of like having more
Game of Thrones.
like, we cannot expect our systems to just shut off if we've been going. So to give yourself, even if you're up a half hour later, give yourself that time to soothe yourself to bed, to rock yourself to bed, and see what happens.
I know we're coming up on time, but I'm just wondering if you have any more, I don't know, secrets is a kind of a funny word that is coming to mind, but I guess ways of living out embodiment that you feel like are key to having a sense of emotional freedom in our day-to-day lives.
Well, I think it's a combination of so much. And that's where the holistic perspective comes through, because we really do have to work with ourselves on every level. And I'm a huge believer in, working with our nervous systems. And most of us have adrenal fatigue as moms. So how can we build our systems? And if there's one takeaway from this part of the conversation, drink tea. Drink Tulsi tea. I have got everybody drinking Tulsi tea right now. Tulsi ashwagandha I should have like stock in organic. Yeah. I tell so many people to drink it. But I'm on like double duty here. Tulsi ashwagandha tea is nourishment from the inside out. So I'm always like, okay, how can we feed ourselves from the inside out? I work with flower essences. I have herbal tinctures that, if there's one in particular, and I have a link on my website. Wish Garden is a local company here in Boulder, and they've been around I think they just celebrated their 50-year anniversary or something. And there's a tincture called Emotional Ally. And I love to, if you're in the middle of, even you're in the middle of the grocery store, and you're overwhelmed with your kids or you're at work or whatever, couple droppers full. I was like literally downing this stuff during COVID. I mean, it was like, it works and it just soothes the system. So there's that. And I'm a big fan. I actually have one right here of this Lotus Way, these flower essences. They're beautiful. And I also have a link for those on my website as well.
I never want a woman to feel overwhelmed, but it's more hopeful. Like my mission when I started Electric Ideas was lighting women up with a new sense of possibility. And I think that these are all small, doable things that women can try on for size.
Totally. And that's what it's all about to me. Like for some of us, we can't just escape and go, away for a weekend, girls' weekend or whatever. It's like, how can we bring these into our lives? And with the tea, I just want to say this, and talking about the bookend, you get home at the end of the day, make yourself a cup of tea and like have a nice mug, hold the mug, feel the heat, taste the tea. It is one of the most grounding, nourishing things you can do for yourself at the end of the day. And it makes a huge difference rather than pouring the wine. Have wine sometimes, but I'm just saying this is actually going to feed your system. This is actually going to soothe and nourish your system. So, and I have a whole spiel of teas, but Tulsi is number one.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I always end my episodes with a final opportunity for reflection. So I guess in this area of body-centered, holistic living, what's one question women could be asking themselves more?
What do I need? What do I need? I think it's as simple as that. What does my body need? What does my heart need? What does my soul need? And to me, so much wisdom comes through when we just take the time to ask ourselves this.
Beautiful. Alison, this was such a wonderful conversation. I know my community will want to follow you for more. So can you share where we can find you?
Yeah, but I just want to say what a gift you're offering, truly, Whitney. Like this is much needed. And so I really honor your mission. Yeah.
Thank you.
So my website is embodymylife.com. And I run retreats. I run a virtual women's circle, in-person women's circle. I do a dance thing. If you're local, happy to be local, Boulder, monthly dance and movement practice. I'm also pretty active on Instagram, and that is at embody_life. And I just love connecting. So there's a link on my website to set up a 20-minute little Zoom chat. And, even if you don't want to work with me, but you just want to connect, I feel like it means a lot to me to have the opportunity to do so. So feel free to schedule.
No, it's generous of you. And we always make sure to capture all the details in the show notes too, so people can find the links there. This was so wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so glad you joined me today. If you're looking for more, feel free to connect with me on Instagram at @WhitneyWoman. And if you enjoyed the show, I invite you to support me by leaving a review or sharing it with a friend. Hope you have an inspired day.